Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Oh, shit, the girl gasped, swinging her arms like a bird with wings. Kathy felt as if she were trying to grasp the air with her fingers and avoid landing in a puddle. Fortunately, she managed to keep her balance, and disaster did not happen. Broken heel of expensive shoes, her older sister, and, undoubtedly, spectacular, but very unpleasant and painful fall in the city center was almost the cherry on the cake. Of the warning signs saying Kathy should get more sleep, more than 4 hours a night, that she should stay in the realm of Morpheus for at least 7 or 8 hours was something Kathy was well aware of. After all, she had a doctor's degree at home, and she had several years of experience in a private clinic, and she often recommended to her patients to get enough sleep, believing that a good rest is the foundation of health. However, as Kathy liked to joke, coaches do not play. In other words, she liked to teach her patients, but she did not follow her own recommendations. She worked hard and studied all the time. Sleep deprivation did not affect the quality of her work. She was collected, morally stable, and organized, so she could cope with the lack of sleep, but with coordination. When she had 12-inch stilettos on her feet, no. In any case, it is not surprising that the young woman's face 6 months ago had such bags under her eyes that no foundation could conceal them, unless white powder for theatrical makeup. But on such measures, the doctor did not dare yet. It was the bruises under her eyes, making Kathy a sleepy raccoon, distinguished her from her older sister Christina. And then, of course, there were the fingerprints, which were unique to everyone. The thing is, they weren't just sisters, they were twins. They resembled each other like 2 peas in a pod, as if their resemblance was not enough. As children, their parents constantly dressed their daughters in the same color and style of clothing, thinking it extremely cute. Well, or they wanted to keep the sisters from fighting, deciding who would get a white dress and who would get a pink one. They even had the same haircut, denying any chance of individuality. As a result, it took time for even their friends to tell the difference between Kathy and Christina. What about friends? Even their own grandmother was always getting the girls mixed up. She usually grabbed one of her granddaughters running past by the chin, scrutinizing her face. Kathy had a little mole under her eye that looked like a marker pen dot. That spot was the only thing that gave her away. Sometimes her mother would leave her sisters with their father. And there were times when one of the daughters was fed twice by the man, and the other was not, because the man sincerely wondered why one child sleeps peacefully and the second one cries bitterly. Of course, as soon as the girls started a dialogue with someone, everything fell into place. The characters and interests of the twins were completely different. They were like yin and yang, ice and flame, heaven and earth. Kathy was a quiet and even shy girl. She reached out to her parents, trying to help them. The girl preferred to spend her leisure time playing educational and creative games. She loved books and animals. Christina was noisy, demanding, and cried. If something didn't go according to her script and command, she would instantly throw a tantrum. She neither liked nor wanted to learn, even as a child. Any attempts to teach her the alphabet or numbers ended with scandals and tears, as well as reproaches to her parents, like they did not love her. Christina was also a bully. As a child, Kathy was particularly affected by her sister's antics. If Christina did something wrong, she always made Kathy look guilty. She did it out of spite. The girl loved her sister more out of a simple innate cunning. She was like the fox that ate the bun. She made a mess of the village, and Kathy was a cute little bunny who did not want to argue with the fox. Even their mother always noted that the younger daughter's character was softer. She was more malleable and easier to compromise. Christina, on the other hand, is a sturdier person who will go out of her way to achieve her goal. Already in kindergarten, the sisters' paths constantly diverge. Kathy went to Christina's pool. They took her to Zumba. Responsible Kathy taught long poems, getting the role of Malvina or Little Red Riding Hood. Christina contented herself with the role of a flower or a snowflake, learning a common dance. One day the girl strongly envied her little sister. She tore her skirt. Her mother had to fix the outfit the night before the matinee. True, in the end Christina's conscience plagued her, and she gave her sister the best candy from her New Year's gift. At school, Kathy tried her hand at drawing. Christina thought it was a boring occupation and demanded a guitar from her parents, intending to become a rock star, but the girl did not work out with a rock band. Except that Christina learned to paint her eyes with dark eyeliner. Sure, the girls sometimes clashed, but rarely. On the contrary, the sisters made the most of their similarities. They had similar eyes and the same mannerisms, so they covered for each other in high school classes. Christina passed her sister's gymnastics exam. Well, Kathy retook chemistry and biology for Christina, which the girl didn't even understand with a C. Of course, both the gym teacher and the chemistry teacher were very surprised by the girl's results. But they gave up. They didn't get to the bottom of it. By high school, Kathy decided on a profession. She decided she wanted to help people and become a doctor. Christina decided the stage was her destiny. Was she in vain? So many years of patriotically wringing her hands and learning to cry, as if on cue. The skill had to be used somewhere, especially since Christina dreamed not only of fame, but also of a rich, luxurious life. She hoped that if she did not become a star, or a movie star, or any show, at least noticed the rich suitor. He had a thing for actresses. As time passed, the sisters were 25 years old. Kathy, as planned, became a therapist. She didn't have the courage for the role of surgeon, and she didn't have the courage to dig into other people's bodies with a scalpel. The case is too scary. Studying in medical school and dealing with patients had hardened Kathy's character considerably. She became tougher and more stable and confident. Christina liked to joke, noticing the cool changes in her sister. "You must have summoned a demon or something when you took your Latin exams." The girl laughed. "The poor guy's got it in you and can't get it out. So you've been sassing everyone." At least Christina didn't take Latin, and her English was B-. But she changed too. Her career as an artist was failing her. She was in her third year and became more nervous and emotional. Often her impulsive, rash actions led Christina into trouble. It was her younger sister who had to help her out. So now Kathy was walking, or rather limping, through the night streets of the metropolis, because once again she decided to cover for her negligent sister who got into trouble. "For me to go along with her one more time," Kathy muttered. "I wouldn't fall for her eyes again. I would practice in the mirror, make tearful expressions, and develop immunity to the strange blonde, so stylishly dressed." But talking to herself, passers-by turned around. Kathy limped toward the bus stop, not wanting to spend her hard-earned money on a cab. She thought it was immoral for drivers to charge immoral, large sums of money to passengers at night. Where was Kathy coming from? At first she was sure she had met her sister's potential employer. However, the meeting turned out to be a disaster. Christina was not on time for an appointment with a big businessman she had managed to pick up somewhere. The girl was going to be in another city at a certain hour. A designer friend offered to pay for her trip to a fashion show, and the girl could not resist. It was a mauvais ton to cancel a meeting with a potential employer. Therefore, Kathy had to fight for a place in the sun, or rather, for a job as a secretary in a prestigious company. "There's nothing to it," Christina persuaded the twin. "You put on my clothes, talk his teeth. You smile a couple of times. You talk to people even better than I do not get confused. You can show me how serious you are about your work. Please, Kathy. All you have to do is answer the phone and make coffee. And they're promising a salary with a lot of zeros. Why are you meeting in a restaurant?" She frowned, looking at the thin strap dress her sister had suggested she wear. "It's not very businesslike. Your would-be boss wants you for coffee, not bed." Christina rolled her eyes. "No, Kathy, it's not like that." She hurried to reassure her sister. "Though if he'd given me a sign, I wouldn't have missed the chance. There's a gold mine there. He's married, of course, but the dignity of a bank account outweighs that pesky point. Besides, he's handsome. Christina giggled, and it was unclear whether she meant it. She was talking or joking. Kathy, on the other hand, was looking at the black dress, wondering if it would cover at least part of her thigh. They say a little black dress like that should be in every woman's closet, Christina declared. Christina correctly interpreted her younger sister's confusion. Yeah, that's what Coco Channel said. I know, Kathy snickered. Except she didn't mean for the dress to be so small. It covers anything at all. How do you sit in it? Come on, Kathy. Legs like ours just have to show. The more liberated sister resented it. Unsure that men pay much more attention to the legs of the future secretary than to her sense of humor and intelligence. So please pretend to be me to the max. I need this job. I'm begging you. Kathy then only sighed in surrender. After all, there was no way her sister could find a job. And yet she was renting a luxurious apartment, previously paid for by a wealthy lover. The lover was gone, but the apartment bills remained. Christina had no intention of moving or changing her lifestyle, so the chance to get a good salary was not to be missed. And Kathy wanted Christina to finally get a grip on her head and stop relying on men. So Kathy found herself in a high-end restaurant. David's potential boss arrived just in time. He asked permission to begin the evening with a meal, saying he was starving. Kathy was embarrassed, but she didn't argue with her sister's future boss. She ordered herself a salad, marveling at its price, and mentally deciding to shake the cost out of her sister after her first paycheck. Dinner was going well, except the interview didn't go according to plan, or rather, not according to Kathy's plan. What was on the mind of the businessman? She didn't know, though it wasn't hard to guess. For example, when he set his plate aside and sat down next to Kathy, the girl nearly choked on a shrimp salad when the man put his clammy palm on her bare leg. Kathy gasped with indignation, abruptly dropping her fork and pulling away toward the window. The path to the exit was closed by David, so the only way to escape was under the table. And the little black dress was in no way suitable for that purpose. What do you think you're doing? Kathy flared up. Don't play hard to get. The man wasn't the least bit embarrassed. You came here in this lovely, a dress that shows more than it hides. You're the one who provoked me, Christina. And since you want the job, I'm prepared to give it to you. Only you must understand that your position will not be an easy one. The man touched her leg again without hesitation. His hand crawled like a filthy spider, clinging to the girl's skin with his fingers. Kathy was so taken aback by the man's impudence that for the first couple of seconds, she just watched his hand slide from her knee to the hem of her dress. It wasn't until he touched the fabric with his fingertips that the girl came to her senses. The blood rushed to her head. Kathy jumped to her feet, causing the table to shake. Not thinking of the consequences, she grabbed her plate of salad, tipping the rest of the contents over David's head. The rucola hung from his ears. Tomatoes and the last shrimp picturesquely decorated his hair. What are you doing, idiot? The man roared, swiping the food from his hair and involuntarily smearing the remnants of sauce and oil in his hair. First of all, a girl in a miniskirt is not a provocation or an excuse for idiots who don't know how to keep their fly zipped. Kathy screamed, shaking with anger. Secondly, no money is worth working for such a dog. And thirdly, if I see you again, my next interview will be with your wife. Let me out right now. Either David was surprised by such a violent reaction, or he just wanted to quickly get rid of the girl who drew so much attention to them. But he jumped silently out of the table. Kathy grabbed her bag and jacket and rushed out of the restaurant. Didn't even finish her salad. Bastard. She was angry at the man. At least she didn't have to pay for it. As if that were not enough. As the girl felt a moment's weakness, she stumbled. Her heel caught in a pothole. She almost fell into a puddle, but managed to avoid it. After that, she continued on her way to the bus stop. Then she heard Christina yell behind her. The frustrated employer roared, "Stop! Still wants to get the money for the salad, she thought. The girl, of course, she did not listen to the man. She rushed through the crowd of people walking through the center. Fortunately, there were plenty of them on a Friday night, but with a broken heel and a tight dress, she could hardly escape David. And Kathy wasn't much good at running in sneakers either, and there were such obstacles when she reached the crosswalk. A crazy idea popped into her head. The girl rushed to the black car that was standing there, letting people through the zebra. Kathy jerked the handle and jumped into the interior. In doing so, she poked the passenger in the back seat with her forehead. What for? She heard the man's astonished voice. "Excuse me, please," Kathy babbled at once so that she couldn't be seen from the window. "I'm being chased by some jerk. I'm begging you to let me out a little farther." The driver was in no hurry to step on the gas. Confused after a short hesitation, the man, she rubbed her forehead, waved a hand drive. He commanded, "Where are you going, girl?" It wasn't until the car moved. Kathy carefully straightened her back. She looked out the window. "I can get off at any stop, just away from the restaurant." She turned to the man and said sincerely, "Thank you. Thank you too. Thank you." The last words the blonde addressed to the driver. He threw an interested glance in the rearview mirror, but did not comment. "I'll take you home," decided the man next to Kathy. "What's the address?" "Oh, that's all right. Thank you." She waved her hand. "I insist you got into my car after all. Now, if anyone chases you again and catches up with you, I shall be in some way involved and responsible." Kathy did not argue, especially her leg was hurting badly. She must have pulled it while she was running. The man gave a command to the driver, as Kathy finally realized that she was not getting into a car with an ordinary man. The interior of the foreign car was posh. The seats were white leather, and the display looked like a marvel of technology. "So who were you running away from?" the man asked. He bent down, taking out a couple of glass bottles of sealed water. A stranger offered one to a traveling companion. From a moral freak who has no conscience value and does not know. There is no word for it. Thinks that money solves all problems and opens all doors. Blurted out the girl, taking the water. "And what have you done with this terrible man?" The man raised his eyebrows, taking a sip of water. "I was looking for a job." The man looked at her thoughtfully, and then hummed indefinitely. "I'm sorry, what kind of job?" "Oh, don't be silly," Kathy grimaced. "He offered me the position of secretary. I thought I'd be making coffee and smiling at people. Anyway, he and I disagreed on lists of responsibilities. Unfortunately, I could not control my emotions, and as a final argument in our dispute, I put a plate of salad on his head." The man could not contain his laughter, listening to the dissatisfied voice of his companion. Meanwhile, Kathy had already started up and drove off, not thinking to shut up. "And I can dress the way I want. For a restaurant, my appearance is quite appropriate. Of course, I wouldn't dress like that for the office." Kathy remembered her flamboyant sister and shook her head doubtfully. "I guess we live in the 21st century anyway, so leave this stigma and ambiguous views alone. Please, a girl in a short skirt is a girl in a short skirt, not a member of the oldest profession. And if you think otherwise, and think that cleavage and bare legs are an invitation to intimacy without obligation, then you, not the woman, are the problem." It got quiet in the salon. Kathy thought she'd been too harsh with the man who'd saved her for a moment. She was just so outraged by what had happened in the restaurant lounge that she couldn't stand it and lashed out at the stranger, her emotions piling up. "I'm sorry. I realize that my words may be rude." She just started to make excuses, averting her gaze. "It's all right. You know, I prefer honest people like you to hypocrites who lie and smile to your face and then stab you in the back for it," the man admitted suddenly, interrupting her. "What is your name?" "Christina." For some reason the girl lied, as if in this dress she could not call herself Kathy. "Christina, are you looking for any kind of job?" The girl furrowed her brow. "Well," unsurely she stretched out. "Who had a job, as a matter of fact?" But remembering her sister's carelessness, Kathy nodded. Anything I can handle, but I am an excellent student. The man nodded, slipping his hand into the inside pocket of his jacket. The position of my secretary is not vacant. However, I am just looking for a new housekeeper. I really liked the previous one, but she moved to another city to take care of her grandson, who was recently born, he said. The work is not the most difficult. I pay on time. I have to keep order, run errands, and feed my cat. I may have to make coffee too. Food is brought to me from the restaurant, so cooking is not part of my duties. The apartment is on Proletarskaya Street, a nice bonus. You can dress as you like. I won't infringe on your honor. If you want to call my number before Monday. The man took out a black mat card and handed it to the girl. The card was velvet to the touch. It is immediately clear that the owner's name and title have been squeezed out of the expensive material on it. Benjamin, the general manager of White Product, LLC. The name of the company seemed vaguely familiar to Kathy, but she couldn't pull the right information about the firm from her recollection. The girl nodded, slipping the business card into her jacket pocket. The car slowed gently in front of the middle entrance of her house. A man looked out the window thoughtfully. "Can I walk you out?" he suggested. "No. Rumors of criminality in this area greatly exaggerated. People go missing here less often than cell phones," Kathy replied, getting ready to leave the salon. "Thanks again, Benjamin." She said one last word and nodded to the driver. "It was nice meeting you." "Christina." The man answered her, looking her straight in the eyes, a pleasant and unexpectedly charming smile on his face. When Kathy saw her, something stirred inside her, as if the butterflies had not flown for a long time. They were tired of Kathy's schedule and fell into hibernation. They fluttered up and fluttered their delicate wings, catching the girl's lungs, rocking them from the inside. Her heart clenched, skipping a beat, when the girl flew into the first car she came across. Then, from the shock, she did not even look at the man. And he was very handsome, in an expensive classic suit, dark gray with gray eyes, and blonde thick hair. Cut in an undercut style, Kathy smiled embarrassedly, closing the door of the foreign car behind her. After seeing the car off, she sighed and pulled both shoes off her feet. She walked home barefoot. On Sunday, when Christina returned to town, the first thing she did was go to her sister. Kathy was going to a conference, spinning by a closet with a mirrored door. Christina settled on her sister's bed, listening to the story of her job interview adventure. At first, she was extremely unhappy with the situation. The girl frowned at her younger twin. "I spent all my money on clothes from a fashion show in St. Petersburg. I really needed this job. Christina, have you been drinking your brains out this weekend?" Kathy went ballistic. "I had to lie down under some creepy guy, so you could get a job as a secretary. But by the way, David is very handsome, especially for his age. He obviously goes to the gym," said Christina, not at all embarrassed. "You have to take it easy, not as a graduate of the Institute of Noble Maidens, or maybe you should be choosy about respecting yourself." Kathy snarled back. Christina only waved a hand as she leaned back on her sister's bed. She picked up one of the stuffed toys Kathy had given her, a teddy bear in a doctor's coat, held it to her chest, stared at the chandelier and sighed dejectedly. "What should I do now?" she asked. "To the ceiling." The very same to him, answering to go to the supermarket checkout, offering packages and goods from the auction basket. Better that than with this David. Kathy spat out the businessman's name with particular contempt. Christina snorted indefinitely in response. Then Kathy remembered that she had a business card from the CEO of Summit Company. She had managed to forget about it. She was wrapped up in the hustle and bustle of her home. "By the way, I mean you were offered a job as a housekeeper, and they promised a good salary. The man seemed to me respectable. He has a car. Must be like a private jet." Kathy pulled out a jacket with a hanger, pulled out a card. Christina read the writing on it without much interest. Just then her perfect eyebrows went up. She jumped up sharply. The card trembled with the tension in her hands. Do you even know who that is? Benjamin is amazing. Where did you find him? Kathy. Kathy was distracted from putting mascara on her lashes. Is he an important bird? He is the richest and most eligible bachelor. Christina chimed in on Forbes' list of the youngest and most successful people. They publish annual rankings of 30 under 30, a list of those who, by the age of 30, have become nationally and even globally known. So Benjamin has been on that list for several years now. And how old is he? Kathy asked, remembering the man's face with high cheekbones and penetrating gray eyes. Not yet. 30. Christina responded with awe, looking at the card as if it were a golden ticket to a happier, more prosperous life. Makes sense, Kathy snorted, applying pink gloss to her lips. She took a step away from the mirror, assessing her appearance. Her sister was reflected next to her. Even now, the twins looked different, though both had the same face. Kathy dressed up in a classic pantsuit and applied light makeup that only accentuated her natural beauty. Christina was tanned. After all, this summer she preferred to stay in the sun, and Kathy didn't get out of the doctor's office. Even now, the older sister looked as if she had escaped from a fancy party in a short white dress and full dress, or was about to go to a disco. That might well have been true, though. You know how often I've seen Benjamin's face in fashion magazines. He's a piece of cake for any girl, but I won't miss my chance. And the rest of you can wash up. Christina waved her business card, smiling broadly and catching in the mirror reflection. Sister's gaze. Thank you, sister. Now I'm not interested in David at all. Let him make his own coffee. Benjamin, it's just a gift. For my birthday and New Year's and March 8th. I got it. I got it. The little sister waved her hand and felt a strange prick. Irritation at Christina's words she tried to push away. And why are you mentally scolded herself, girl? Anyway, no time for romantic nonsense. But though her mind was bending, Kathy's heart ached with frustration and resentment. Christina jumped up from the bed, unaware of her sister's inner irritation. The girl drew her to her and kissed her cheek tinklingly, leaving a trail of bright scarlet lipstick. Thank you, darling. Well, I'm off, she said. I have to call Benjamin and make an appointment. Kathy looked at her sister's lipstick stain on her right cheek, and with a sigh, she shook her head. She wiped away the thought of Benjamin the same way she'd wiped away the lipstick with a damp napkin. Christina did not have a hunting license, but she was a professional hunter, predominantly preying on all sorts of fat men. Usually such ladies are called the well-known term gold digger, or gold diggers. Christina liked that term. It's a shame you can't put it in her employment book. She realized early on that working wasn't really her thing. She wanted to spend her life, much less her youth, on entertaining and maintaining her beauty. She loved shopping trips abroad, going to spas and beauticians. She didn't like small office cubicles that looked like shoeboxes with disgruntled people stuffed in them. She disliked public transportation, auction-price groceries, and supermarkets in general, with their lines of customers breathing down each other's necks. In general, middle-class life was not for her, except that she couldn't make any money for a luxurious life. She didn't try, though. Why should she? If you have a spectacular appearance, which is able to impress rich men. The problem was that this kind of relationship didn't last. Sometimes the problem was the men. Sometimes Christina herself got bored. Of course, she still had to work. She had to eat, and men weren't always willing to pay for Christina's needs. But she was not discouraged and kept looking for the prince in a white Mercedes, sifting through men as a gold prospector sifts through the sand, in search of the coveted precious metal. So Christina's track record has included married politicians and entrepreneurs and even artists. But Benjamin seemed exactly the man she was dreaming of. He was a tall, stately brunette husband candidate. Eyes piercing, gray as the morning fog or rainy sky. Oh, how often she had looked into those eyes when Benjamin's face flaunted on the covers of glossy magazines. What had Benjamin made his fortune on? Christina did not really know. Whether he created an application for banks, or many games, or all at once. But she didn't really care. The girl called the number on her business card. She even hesitated for a couple of seconds when she heard a handsome man's voice on the phone, which threw in a curt voice. "Yes, I'm listening." Couldn't Christina believe it was Benjamin calling? And he's answering her right now. "Hello," Benjamin pronounced the girl, walking back and forth in her studio apartment and twirling her blonde curls on her finger. "This is Christina. You left me a card. You offered me a job. I'll take it. If the offer still stands, of course. For the housekeeper position, right?" There was a short silence, during which the man tried to remember who he was talking to. Then his voice became much softer and more cheerful, and Christina could hear the man smiling. "Of course, the offer is current. We can meet tonight after 5 or tomorrow morning. How do you feel about it?" "I will come tonight." Christina blurted out too hastily, as if she were afraid the chance would slip through her fingers in a second. "All right, I'll text you the address and show you the scope of work. I'll explain everything. I'm just leaving on Tuesday, so you have to keep the apartment in order and, most importantly, not to leave hungry Marcus. The girl frowned. "It's my cat," Benjamin explained. "I told you, remember?" "Oh yes, the cat," she muttered, making a mental note to ask her sister about their conversation, so as not to miss any important details. "What am I going to do after 5? I'll see you then." The man agreed, dropping the call first. The heart in Christina's chest was pounding frantically. She was already quite experienced in relationships with men, so she had not expected such confusion on her own. All the more so from an ordinary phone call. What would happen when she saw it? Benjamin would personally faint. The blonde bit her lip and even put her palm to her chest, trying to calm her heartbeat. A blissful smile appeared on her face. "Hold on," Benjamin said aloud, clutching the smartphone in her hand. "You'll be mine for sure." It was easy to make that statement, but it was not so easy to make it come true. At first, Christina noticed that Benjamin treated her with special sympathy and hospitality. He met her, showed her his luxurious apartment, and explained what he expected of the housekeeper. He introduced her to the red-haired and impudent cat, who did not like the employee very much. Then Christina and Benjamin had a cup of coffee, and then the man left. But their communication didn't stop. He sometimes wrote to Christina, using as an excuse questions about everyday life or about the Marcus. After she returned from a business trip, Benjamin even invited her to dinner, more precisely, to keep him company. However, the more often they talked, the less his affection remained. It was as if the housekeeper was spoon-feeding him. Soon Benjamin became completely cold to her, lost all interest in her person. Christina did not understand what she was doing wrong. After all, her charm was working to the maximum coming from the blonde romances. It was possible to defeat a company of men, not just one Benjamin. However, the fact remained. A man had become uninterested in her. She was unaware that Benjamin already liked the girl. True, her sister Kathy. He looked for her in his housekeeper, but did not find her. Christina was different and made a different impression. She was not open and emotional, trying to please. Benjamin smiled subserviently, looked strangely. Sometimes a man was even frightened. The look was as if the housekeeper was planning to eat him. Even her appearance was different. No, she was still the same blonde with blue eyes, except she was a little too groomed, maybe even prettier than when they first met, but her heart did not flutter. At first, Benjamin thought the girl was just confused about her new role, didn't know how to behave with her employer. He tried to bring back her past mood, but in vain. The girl didn't joke around anymore. She didn't make any harsh statements or fussy actions. What had she done to the man? Then Benjamin thought he'd been mistaken in his first impression. Yes, he was disappointed, but not too disappointed. He just moved on, letting the housekeeper dust the shelves in his apartment. Christina, however, had no intention of giving up so easily. First, she tried to seduce the man in a trivial way. She prepared for work with the utmost care. She flashed before his eyes in open and bright outfits, A couple of times she even dropped things to bend over. Only to impress Benjamin was not so easy. Then the girl decided to play on his manhood by letting him rescue a damsel in distress. Remembering her failed theatrical past and the school she never graduated from, she acted out a whole play. I had to ask Kathy to call her at harvest time. And then she played the part of one actor. "Hello," said Christina, putting it in front of her. Benjamin, who had come home to rest and change his shirt, a cup, freshly brewed coffee. The girl froze. Abruptly, her face flushed her lips, pale. She touched them with trembling fingers and whispered, "What? But how?" In general, Stanislavski would have said, "Christina, I do not believe it." So she tried to play out the tragedy. "Now where shall I go to spend the night?" asked Christina to Kathy, who only snorted in response, not wanting to play along with her sister any other way. "Okay, I'll think of something." She dropped the call, glancing thoughtfully toward the painting that hung on the wall in Benjamin's apartment. The man, becoming an unwilling listener to the conversation, measured the girl with an interested look. He took another sip of coffee, put the cup on a saucer. "Did something happen to you?" "Christina." "Oh, nothing serious." She waved her arms in a strained smile. "Just a housing problem. But it's solvable." She took a vase of candy, which Benjamin adored. She placed it on the coffee table in front of the man. Benjamin looked at the truffles, then at the wristwatch, then back at the housekeeper. "Don't you have a place to sleep? Isn't that right?" "I got it." The girl squeezed her fingers together, lowering her lashes in embarrassment. "Yes, but it's only for 2 or 3 nights. I'll think of something to ask my friends. Maybe, though she's gone." "Oh, why am I telling you this? I'm sorry, it's not your problem. It's mine. Can you stay here?" Benjamin suggested, getting up from his seat. He never touched the candy. He did not drink the coffee. Christina waved her thickly painted eyelashes, like a bird with wings here. "No, I can't inconvenience you like that. It's too unprofessional. Come on." Benjamin waved his hand, grabbing his jacket, which had been thrown on the back of the sofa earlier. "I trust you with my cat's most prized possession, so you're practically a member of my little family." Benjamin smiled good-naturedly. Then he looked at the clock face again, clearly running late for something. "I'll be late tonight," he announced, heading for the exit. "If you want to stay, you must take the guest room. Believe me, it won't bother me at all. You're always in the apartment as it is, so nothing will change." At last, Benjamin winked merrily at her and hurried out. Christina, on the other hand, changed from a bewildered expression to a satisfied one. Everything had turned out just as she had planned. "No, honey, things will change, won't they?" she promised, smiling slyly. However, even here Christina gave a slip of the tongue. She managed to stay under Benjamin's roof for 3 nights, but it was no use. The girl walked around in her towel in front of him, pretending to be extremely embarrassed by the situation, and asked him for a shirt. There was no way she could bring her own clothes, and she showed off her tanned legs and even hinted at her rounded buttocks. She stood up on her tiptoes to reach the top shelf. Maybe he's into boys, or a freak. What evil reasoned the girl when her 3 days of frontal assaults expired and she pretended to have solved the problems and returned to her apartment? Christina even decided to go through all the information from the internet to see on whose field Benjamin was playing. However, the man was in relationships and always with decent girls. "Right," angrily whispered Christina, looking at the picture of Benjamin's ex-girlfriend, a model with black hair and pale skin. Maybe dye her hair. Christina picked up the ends of her long wheat-colored hair with her fingers, looking thoughtfully at the strands. The twins' hair was extremely beautiful and untouched. Both girls had grown it, avoiding any mention of dye. "No way," muttered the girl with a shake of her head. "I won't touch you, my favorite hairs." Then she decided to take desperate measures and went to a fortune teller. It was an incident that led her there. Christina searched the internet for articles on how to charm a man for dummies. The tips were ridiculous and stupid, and the ones that were good didn't work for Benjamin. But here among the many links she found a special one: witch doctoring help, divination, fortune-telling, rituals, and charms. I can enchant a lover, and payment is not required. Christina giggled at first. What has progress come to? Fortune tellers have already set up their own websites. Soon they will tell fortunes online for free and without registration. However, on the site, the girl went through to pacify her curiosity. That's where the promises of a hereditary fortune teller drew her in. You will immediately notice the result. The effect is immediate. You will not have to wait. The description of the ritual for a spell says, "I don't take money for the work. You can thank me after you get the result." All rituals tested, effective, and completely harmless. I promise you complete confidentiality. The more Christina delved into it, the more she was beckoned to try it. After all, she'd already tried everything except for a spell. Well, she muttered. The girl, leafing through the page with black gold letters. Her doubts did not last long. In an hour, she telephoned the fortune teller and made an appointment. The fortune teller lived in an ordinary apartment in an upscale neighborhood. Her free predictions must be expensive. Christina snorted in her mind, looking at the spacious mansion of the fortune teller. The fortune teller turned out to be an adult gypsy. Her eyes were black, like wet olives. Hair thick, tough, like a Maine horse. The witch led her guest into the far room. The curtains, which were closed, did not let any sunlight in. Instead, the woman clicked on a lamp button, filling the space with a dim white light. Seated Christina at the small round table, covered, heavy, with a tablecloth. She nodded businesslike. "So tell me, who are you pining for?" Brought his picture and things. Christina wanted to sneer, saying that she wasn't the fortune teller. So the woman should already know the answers to her questions. But she didn't want to be impertinent or test her fate. Would this witch curse her yet, or put a crown of celibacy on her head? She put a teaspoon of Benjamin's picture in front of the fortune teller from his apartment, and even a couple of hairs that she pulled out of Benjamin's comb. "His heart is free," the woman asked, pulling the picture toward him, "and that's what counts." The blonde witch doctor's eyebrow raised, squinting at her with displeasure. Taking someone else's place in a man's soul is much harder than an empty corner. If he is in love, the right of another is more difficult. Christina hesitated, but then shook her head in denial. "No, I think he only likes the cat. Work and sweets." The girl chuckled. Fortune teller humor did not appreciate. Seriously nodded. "Tell me, have you done this before?" Christina's foot was nervously tapping under the table. "I've fallen in love with men, brought loose men back to their families, made them feel good about themselves again." "Melancholy," the fortune teller said, taking out a pendant on a chain and starting to tie a transparent stone around it. She used a hair from Benjamin's head to ward off rivals. Helped people to meet true love. At that, the gypsy looked inquisitively at Christina and continued. "I will do my job, but will this love bring you happiness? I can make you find your other half. Would you like that?" she suggested, and her hand froze over the picture of Benjamin. The stone, which looked like a clear tear, swayed, catching the glare of artificial light on its surface. Christina shook her head, biting her lip with nervous excitement. "No, you'll find me some builder repairman's love now. You'll have to build a paradise in the shack with him later," she sniggered. "I'd rather suffer and suffer next to Benjamin crying in Bentley or in the Maldives than to collect money for a loaf of bread." The fortune teller nodded briefly, accepting this position. It was obvious that she didn't really care what Christina chose. The witch was focused on the result. The stone began to twirl around the picture, and the woman began to move her lips silently. She pulled out a beautiful box that contained wet earth, took Christina's hand, and stuck her finger in the contents. She also smeared Benjamin's picture with it. I smeared the dirt on his high forehead. How quickly would the ritual work? The impatient guest asked, wiping her hand with a damp cloth. The fortune teller said, already having started to fume the photo. I'll give you a special powder. If you stay alone with your beloved until he sleeps, we'll finish him off. Then it's just a matter of time. He'll fall in love with you. He won't be able to live. You can be sure of that. No, it's better to let him live." The girl muttered, looking apprehensively at the thick stack of tarot cards. On top of that was the 13th card, with the image of a grim reaper from behind the smoke that emanated. A bundle of lit herbs made her sting. The eyes and nose of the witch doctor did this and that, forcing at times in Christina to answer questions, utter strange words, or otherwise participate in the ritual. At the end, as the woman had promised, she handed Christina a cloth sack. Christina felt the contents through the cloth, feeling something like fine sand, or something similar to ground coffee. Baking soda, flour, sprinkle it in the drink, or in the food will sprinkle a little bit clear, not immediately, admonished the gypsy girl. He will fall in love with you in the end. But remember, a spell, magic is dark, but the matter is thin, so that you will love for life. I can't do that. Either you will run to me for the rest of your life, or you can try to hold on to a man on your own. Christina nodded, hiding the pouch in her purse. She could hold a man in love in her clinging fingers, and he would not go away from her after the wedding. And if she did, she would give half of her property, which was not bad either. And the gypsy also remembered, if there is a longing in his heart for someone, she will only become more certain that he is not in love. Unsure. Christina nodded hastily, her eyes full of sweat. If at first she had been skeptical, now the fortune teller's words gave her confidence. In any case, the girl had nothing to lose. Well, do I really have to pay? Nothing. Christina asked, standing on the threshold of the witch's apartment. She shook her head and then grinned with just one side of her mouth. Told you, you'll thank me. How will you see the results? Unsure of my work, Christina fixed her hair and nodded contentedly. Well, I'll thank you. Rest assured, as soon as I'm with Benjamin. So they said their goodbyes. When Christina got into a cab to return to Proletarskaya, she was bursting with anticipation. She had already seen how the millionaire falls to his knees, looking at her with amorous eyes, carrying her in his arms. Benjamin really fell down after trying the magic potion. Only trouble is, he did not fall to his knees to propose to his housekeeper, but from a sudden weakness. What seized him on that ill-fated evening? Christina returned to the businessman's apartment in high spirits. She was purring a pop tune under her nose as she walked around the house wiping the dust with a damp rag without noticing Marcus. The girl almost stepped on a fluffy red tail. The cat jumped, arched his back, and hissed at her unhappily. "Shut up! Flee! Stop!" threatened him with a rag Christina. "Your food is in my hands, so do not bite the hand who feeds you, okay? Especially since I'm about to become your mistress." Cheeky ginger face. The cat either sneezed from the dust or defiantly snorted in response to such claims of the employee was heard as the key was inserted into the keyhole, turning it twice. The front door swung open, letting in the owner of the cat and the apartment. Marcus immediately ran to Benjamin to rub at his feet and leave red hair on his black pants. As a sign of extreme affection, the man picked up the pet in his arms. "Hello, Christina. Are you still there?" He smiled. To the girl who usually ended her workday early. "Yes, I was just finishing up. I was away today, I warned you. But I decided to finish the job. Come on, you shouldn't have. The dust wouldn't go anywhere until tomorrow." The man, who was also in a good mood, made a joke. Benjamin sat down on his favorite spot on the couch and sat the contented cat on his lap. "While I am here to make you tea or coffee." The girl rubbed the rag in her fingers with excitement. Benjamin thought for a moment, scratching the neck of the Marcus already sprawled on his legs. "If you don't mind, I'll have a black tea with 2 spoonfuls of sugar, as usual." Christina almost jumped for joy. Obviously, fate was on her side. Now she would definitely accomplish what she had planned. While the kettle boiled, the girl placed cookies and candy in front of Benjamin. Then she brewed some strong and sweet tea, just as Benjamin liked. She wanted to add a little powder, but her hand twitched with excitement, and almost all the contents ended up in the mug. She was frightened. "What's the matter?" The man in the chair called back. "Oh, I did. I burned my finger, but it was nothing serious." The girl found herself. "The tea is ready." Christina brought the cup over, trying to calm the trembling in her hands, setting the drink in front of Benjamin. She stepped back into the kitchen area again surreptitiously, watching him. Benjamin moved the cat to the couch, and it settled down next to him, curled up in a ball. The man checked the messages on his phone. Then he looked at his hands, remembered that he had not washed them, and went to the bathroom. In short, Christina was exhausted. While Benjamin finally took the cup in his hands, he inhaled the fragrant steam and did not feel anything unusual. He took a sip. The blonde's heart was beating like a frantic drum. She pretended to wipe down the tabletop, but she had been rubbing the same shiny spot for 5 minutes. Then the man, staring at his phone, took another sip of tea, then another, and then it began. Benjamin frowned sharply, the phone in his hand trembled. But the man managed to squeeze his fingers without letting it out of his hands. He put the mug, which suddenly seemed very heavy, on the table. Benjamin swallowed, realizing that he was beginning to see the objects around him vaguely. It was as if the focus of his thoughts was confused. His movements became jerky. It was as if lead flowed through his veins, making his body heavy. Christina murmured, leaning forward and resting his palms on the low coffee table. "I don't feel so good about the low coffee table." The girl watched in horror as the man rocked forward. Then he gave the last of his strength, pushed himself off the table, and fell backward onto the couch. Benjamin's eyes rolled back and covered Benjamin. The housekeeper called out to him. Only Benjamin did not answer. He showed no signs of life at all. The cat began to meow and thrash around beside his owner. "My God," Christina muttered, pressing her palms to her mouth. My God, what will happen now?" She rushed to Benjamin, but was seized by a wild fear. Instead, Christina ran to her purse and took out her cell phone, dialing the number of the man who had always saved her. "Hello," came Kathy's weary voice, followed by a sweet long yawn. The call from her older sister had awakened her, robbing her of even the scant bits of sleep she had allowed herself. "Kathy, Kathy," Kathy screamed hysterically, Christina repeating her sister's name like an incantation to save Kathy. "Help me, Kathy. God." "Christina, what are you doing?" Hearing her sister's sobs, Kathy was overexcited. "What is it? Where are you?" The dream was gone. She was frightened for her sister. Christina, usually feisty and bold and arrogant, did not fall into such a state. "Kathy, I'm at Proletarska in Benjamin's apartment." She lowered her voice to a whisper, as if she feared they were being overheard. "Kathy, I don't think he's breathing. I think I killed him, that I killed him." After an incoherent set of words, Christina let out a convulsive sob, which hit her sister's ear pressed against the smartphone. Kathy involuntarily cringed and began marching around the room, trying to get Christina to explain the situation. "Benjamin, this is Benjamin. Your boss is the one?" asked the sister, whose brain had not yet had time to wake up. There was another sob followed by a sob. "Yes, that's him." "What happened to him?" I didn't mean to, Kathy. I gave him some powdered tea my grandmother sold me. I told him it was a love potion, and he went pale. Yes, he fainted. I'm shaking, I'm very scared, and I think he's not breathing. So why the hell are you calling me?" Christina. Frightened, Kathy started faster. "Call an ambulance if someone's sick." "How would you know?" "Maybe your grandmother gave you some laundry detergent, and you gave it to a man." "I can't call an ambulance. I'll get arrested." "They'll arrest you, big sister. You'll be arrested if you don't save him." Kathy was indignant and even angry. She was already walking around the room again like a little hurricane, dumping things in her bag. The girl grabbed the first aid kit as well, running out of the house. I am calling you because you are a doctor," cried Christina. "Help him, Kathy. Save him, I beg you. I'll be locked up, and I'll get out when I'm all wrinkled, and no one wants me. I'm a therapist." Kathy screamed as she ran down the entryway stairs. "I don't treat people for poisoning, and this is no time to be thinking about men. Text me the address. I'll be there soon." It wasn't a long drive to the upscale neighborhood where Benjamin lived. It was strange, in fact, that the slum that the landlady had joked about having a great view of poverty and the posh new buildings with shiny panoramic windows were separated by only 7 minutes on the highway. It wasn't until Kathy started and drove to the address she suddenly remembered that she hadn't even locked the door in a hurry. "God, I hope that when I come back, I'll at least have a couch to sleep on," muttered the disgruntled girl. Unfortunately, God was on his lunch break at that second because he had missed her prayer because of her nerves and haste. The girl almost got herself an audience with the Apostle Peter. She almost clipped a silver foreign car. The man in the car overtook her with accessible gestures and explained what he thought of women behind the wheel and of her in particular. Kathy, offended, muttered as she drove into the right turn. It's okay, Baldy. I remember you. You come to me with a headache complaint. I'll send you in for a colonoscopy." Finally, she pulled up in front of Benjamin's house. Before Kathy could even touch the doorbell with her finger, the door swung open. Christina, with eyes huge with terror, grabbed her sister and pulled her inside the apartment. He showed her in there. She put her finger on the couch as he drank his tea and collapsed. I checked, however, he was still breathing. Kathy immediately turned into a professional, abstracted from everything else. She decided that she would have time to scold her sister later. The main thing now was to figure out how to help the man and whether she could cope on her own, or she would need to call in a medical team. The girl checked the pulse, the breathing, the reaction of the businessman's pupils to light. Christina flickered on the other side of the couch, constantly peering behind his back, but hesitating to come any closer. "Is it alive in there?" she whispered with superstitious dread. Chick muttered. "The younger twin is extremely unhappy with the situation. Take the tea. Pour it into some dishes. I'll take it to the lab for analysis." Christina obediently rushed into the kitchen to carry out the command. She immediately rattled the jars, looking for a suitable container. Kathy laid the man more comfortably, pulled the noose off his neck, unbuttoned his shirt, turned his head to the side. "I think he's having an allergic reaction, but I can't say with certainty," said the girl when her sister came back. "His skin is normal. His pulse is normal. I don't understand it. Maybe he just fell asleep." The washed bottle trembled in Christina's hands as she poured the contents of the cup, thinking the old woman had given me sleeping pills. What a nasty grandmother. And I almost believed her. Christina cocked her head for a moment, forgetting that she'd almost sent the man to the other side of the world. Kathy glanced at the twin in judgment, but looked at her as if in the reflection of a mirror. "Christina, you almost took a man's life. And if he is allergic to the contents of the powder, what if it was rat poison? Do you even think with your head when you don't know what you put in people's food? And I'm not talking about the fact that you trusted some fortune teller. They're all charlatans. I thought you stopped believing in fairy tales in elementary school." But apparently she was wrong. Reading the nurse out, Kathy gathered up the stethoscope. As she did so, she did not immediately notice her patient moving on the couch. He sighed heavily with his moaning, drawing both nurses in. As if on cue, the twins fell silent with tension, looking at Benjamin. When Benjamin turned his head and opened his eyes, the room around him was floating, refusing to take its usual shape, both the ceiling and the overly bright light fixture and pieces of furniture. He tried to stand up, but that too was unsuccessful. His head felt heavy, like it was stuffed with absorbent cotton instead of brains or sawdust, like Winnie the Pooh. "Stay down, please don't get up." The man heard a familiar voice. A cold hand lay on his chest, for some reason not hidden behind his shirt. The touch of gentle fingers was pleasant, Benjamin even wished that the woman's hand had touched his forehead. Suddenly, it would put his thoughts in order. As if hearing his wish, Kathy's fingers gently rested on Benjamin's forehead, checking the temperature with a touch. "What's the matter with me?" he muttered, barely moving his lips. "That's a good question. I don't know yet," Kathy admitted. Leaning over him as she removed Benjamin's palm, he almost groaned in frustration. The girl, on the other hand, mumbled that your temperature was normal too. "You know, progress is so great that they already invented a thermometer," joked the man, childishly angry that she took her hand away. "Even electronic ones, not mercury ones, which can provoke poisoning." Benjamin felt like a typical member of the strong sex hit by a cold. He was getting ready to die and wanted everyone to know about it and worry about him. "I see you're kidding," Kathy commented indifferently. "That's fine. Yes, I have a thermometer too, but good old-fashioned. Touching has never been out of the question for me. And my mother used to take my temperature with her lips." Benjamin said it again. "They say it's more effective. You should try it," she hummed vaguely. "I have a thermometer, too, you know. You should try it." Kathy Benjamin, unaccustomed to this impertinent form of communication with his person, answered in tone. He pulled himself together and opened his eyes again. He closed them immediately, then opened them more slowly, forcing himself to make sure he wasn't imagining things. "Christina," he muttered, gazing into the girl's beautiful face. Then his gaze slid from his housekeeper's face to the same face. Except the other Christina had a lot more makeup on, and she was dressed as usual, frankly. "Your mother is shown here and there." Benjamin's surprised voice of Postman Petkins commented on the situation. "Yes, but not your mother." "But your mother's mother," gloomily corrected himself. Benjamin still does not understand. He was seeing double, or was he hallucinating? "Christina, it was you who muttered." He looked from one blue-eyed blonde to the other. "I don't think I'm still feeling well." "My name is Kathy," the girl explained softly. "I am a doctor. Christina called me because you were feeling ill. I'm afraid you've been poisoned. Do you have an allergy to anything?" Benjamin shook his head uncertainly. "Not that I know of, not until today." "Do you feel nauseous? Any animal urges?" "No, just dizzy and heavy. I feel lethargic and weak." "Fine," Kathy nodded, though Benjamin, of course, saw nothing different in what was going on. The girl wrote something on a piece of notepaper and tore it out and handed it to her older sister, Christina, who was lurking nearby. All this time, she has not dared to say a word. "Go to the drugstore and get what's on the list," Kathy commanded her. "You know, I have my own doctor," said Benjamin, who was slowly coming to his senses and perceiving the reality around him more and more clearly. "I don't think he would approve if I start taking medication prescribed by someone else. He's very strict." Kathy grinned briefly, tucking a messy tuft of hair behind her ear. "I thought I'd just keep Christina occupied so I could be alone. I need to talk to you about my sister. After all the stress she's been through, she obviously needs some fresh air and a sedative, which I sent her for," Kathy explained. Benjamin felt something strange and familiar inside him as he listened to this young blonde. "Listen," sighed Kathy. "Let me begin by saying that my sister is not a bad person, nor is she evil. She acts impulsively with her heart, not her brain. And in tandem, her organs don't work like all people." So Benjamin nodded. "And she didn't mean to poison you, I swear." Kathy blurted out and hastily raised her palm up, childishly, as if she'd already shown it to the members of the court. Benjamin rubbed his forehead, trying to clear his thoughts. He remembered the tea he'd been drinking before he passed out. So there it was, that she had put something in the mug. Benjamin was so astonished that he didn't even have time to get angry. But what and why? What I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Honestly, I'll make sure it doesn't affect your health," hotly promised Kathy. "Why should it?" "Well, if I told her she was in love, and people in love do rash things, that would be enough of an explanation. She decided to send me to the afterlife because she was in love." still couldn't appreciate the whole picture, Benjamin. She didn't mean to poison you. Kathy frowned and even stomped her foot in indignation, which she had no right to do. She just trusted the wrong people. She hoped you would reciprocate her feelings. Well, you know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So she poured you a magic potion, but she didn't mean it. And I'm only telling you this so you can try to forgive her. She's terribly frightened, and she's sorry. I understand you have a right to be angry. You can even sue her and everything. But what will you win? I promise it won't happen again, and she won't come into your life. Benjamin listened to Kathy, but didn't know how to react. On the one hand, he was getting better by the minute. On the other, if there was potassium cyanide in the cup, what then? And yet he trusted Christina wholeheartedly and had even left her in his apartment overnight. Benjamin shook his head under Kathy's gaze. No, it was his own fault for the situation. He'd had problems with girls before, even worse. But Christina had seemed different to him in the car, so he foolishly fell for it. He was surprised to see Marquise at his guest's feet, fondling her and drawing attention. Benjamin knew his cat. He could sense people's intentions a mile off. It's all right. Benjamin waved his hand. However, your sister should show her love in a different way, or she risks finding a mate in jail. Kathy breathed a sigh of relief and, unexpectedly for Benjamin, leaned down to wrap her arms around his fingers. Thank you. Thank you very much, she thanked him warmly and sincerely. The girl blurted out a smile and shook Benjamin's hand. Something strange stirred in the man's chest again, those unfamiliar feelings of sympathy, like the other day in the car. And then there was the familiar perfume she was wearing, sweet and fruity. Her sister used something pungent, and Kathy. The girl's hands stopped clutching her fingers. Benjamin. He missed the thought that seemed to float to the surface in his mind. Just then, the standard phone ringtone sounded. Kathy flinched, glancing around for her bag. It turned out the girl had thrown it on the floor. From the bag, she retrieved her cell phone and sat down. On the edge of her chair, she took the call. Hello, I can't really talk right now. The girl looked at me blankly, and her face stretched. Her silence did not last long. I mean, like wide open. She jumped to her feet. I mean, how was she carried out? In broad daylight. Okay, it's evening, but it's not night. Kathy, marching from one chair to the other and back again, settling back into it as if her legs were weak. All right, called the police. I'll be right there, she muttered, wiping the fumes from her forehead. When Kathy dropped the call, Benjamin saw the girl's face was gone. What's wrong? He asked. Careful, I have been robbed. Kathy was indignant, her blue eyes flashing angrily. A neighbor called. She came home and the door was open. She thought something had happened to me. She started calling out for me, and two men came flying out, knocking her down. She thought they had done something to me and ran inside. Everything was upside down in there. They had taken out everything that wasn't nailed to the floor. The girl groaned heavily and rubbed her face with her hands, as if she hoped to wash the nightmare away. Then she lifted her head and looked at Benjamin grudgingly. Remember, I joked that the rumors about my neighborhood were exaggerated. How was I wrong? I didn't close the door for the first time in my life because I was rushing here. And this is the result of how. How could I have been so lucky? Why was it today that someone decided to pull my doorknob? Benjamin frowned. His thoughts were like a dragging kissel, flowing sluggishly and reluctantly, but something in the blonde's words struck him. Then the epiphany hit Benjamin. You? He exclaimed and leaned forward, but immediately grunted and went back to his seat. Are you the girl who climbed into my car? Kathy stopped, suffering for a moment, casting a confused look at Benjamin. Oh, well, yes, I am, she admitted, deciding there was no point in denying it. I was helping Christina get a job that night. When you gave me the card, I gave it to my sister. But why didn't you call? Benjamin asked. I gave the card to you, so I don't need a job. I am a doctor. Kathy defiantly held up a stethoscope around her neck. But I wanted to see you. That's cheating, Benjamin insisted, with indignation coming to his senses. But is that how you see me? We are the same. Daddy suggested we paint numbers on our foreheads with green to avoid confusion. Kathy tried to justify herself. No, we're not. You are absolutely different. Benjamin was indignant, indeed, feeling deprived. Kathy stared in amazement at the man she was seeing for the second time in her life. His words were a pleasant sort of balm. Of course, the twins benefited greatly from their resemblance. The sisters never particularly regretted it. But when you're confused by your grandmother, your father, and even your boyfriend, you can't help but feel complicated. So having someone you don't know see you as an individual rather than a reflection of your sister seemed like a miracle. I only now realized how different your sister is from you, Benjamin continued. Unhappily, I thought I was wrong about you. And now I realize I liked you, and not Christina. That's all there is to it. Your humor, your speech, your character, even your perfume. Benjamin realized that he had said too much only when it was too late to hold his tongue. He looked up at the frozen Kathy. Did you like me? She interrogated in more amazement than a broken shoe or the fact that she bumped your head when she broke into the car. Benjamin smiled, rubbing the back of his neck. I think the effect was a combination of the two. Kathy wanted to say something else, but when she looked at the phone in her hand, she perked up. I'm sorry, but the police have been called and I have to run. I'll come back. Okay. And when the lab test comes back, I'll let you know. Oh, and I'll take my sister. I swear I won't let her see you again. Kathy was making that last promise on the way out. Stop. Let me take you, he said. Benjamin, but the girl hissed at him. No, don't you dare. First, we'll figure out what's wrong with your health. Don't drive yet. Especially I have a car. What about you? Get some sleep. I'll get some sleep. You will come tomorrow with some hope in your tone, won't you? Asked the man. From something, not wanting to miss the fussy blonde. I promise, Kathy shouted before the door closed. A year passed. Christina sat on the bed in the room of the Country Manor Hotel. The girl was wearing a lavender-colored dress, sewn with flowing fabric hair. The girl's hair was gathered in an elegant bundle and decorated with flowers. Christina looked lovely, but she knew all eyes would not be upon her today. After all, her little sister looked 100 times more beautiful. How was it? Kathy asked anxiously, straightening the non-existent folds on the long white skirt. It's such a train. What if somebody steps on it? You look just fine. Once again, Christina reassured her sister. Benjamin will faint at the altar if you refuse. Seeing the look Kathy had sent her, Christina held her hands up in a gesture of surrender and laughed. Figuratively, Kathy figuratively giggled her older sister. Enough of this man fainting caused by his sisters. Kathy turned again to the mirror, in which she was able to assess her outfit and image as a whole. White lace and natural silk lightened the silhouette, emphasizing the figure. The skirt guarded my hips, but further it flowed freely to the floor, turning into a train. I can't believe I'm getting married. Kathy exhaled, adjusting the veil in her hair. The bride was overwhelmed with excitement and trepidation. I can't believe it. That you're doing it before me. I'm older. Christina fluttered her arms. Just for a minute. Kathy poked in her tone. Christina was joking, of course. There was no jealousy in her at all. It was at first she didn't understand her sister. That ever-busy, quiet girl had managed to get a millionaire off her back. However, she immediately accepted the relationship between Benjamin and Kathy, which began to develop rapidly. Barely had the man found his random stranger. The important thing is that now there will be a rich man in our family. Christina laughed when Kathy and Benjamin started dating. And then maybe I'll get to know his friends. Benjamin paled and blushed and shook his head at the prospect. No, my friends are too precious to me to risk their health. I don't know what your sister will slip them. He grumbled playfully. In fact, Christina and Benjamin managed to make up and even found some common ground. And as if he wasn't afraid for his acquaintances, Benjamin Christina was able to charm one of his friends. James fell in love with the blonde at first sight, seeing her at a friend's birthday party. Perhaps what won him over was the fact that Christina didn't even think about showing off in front of him. She was just being cheerful, a little silly, but not in the least bit complex about it. James was not fabulously rich, but he could win her heart. They had been dating for 6 months, and only Kathy knew that today, at her wedding, he would propose marriage to Christina. When the bride is throwing the bouquet, looking at her feet, Christina remarked busily, "I'm still waiting for a thank you." "What's that for?" The bride was astonished. Turning back to her sister, "How could it be?" "For the spell. It worked. He just saw you first. That's why he fell in love without memory." Christina giggled, looking slyly at her sister. Kathy pouted grudgingly, putting her hands on her sides, striking the sugar bowl pose. The spell worked, but like a tremendous sleeping pill, reminded Kathy, squinting unhappily. Indeed, the results of the examination showed that Christina had drunk the businessman with nothing more than powder for beautiful dreams. Only the dose was so large that it put the man to sleep in an instant. No but. It worked after all, Christina said dreamily, insisting. "You know that woman witch told me that if there is a longing in his heart, it will only get stronger." So she got stronger. He was running after you like a puppy, and you kept turning your nose up at him. It wasn't clear. Christina believes in her words and magic in general. Either she's joking around with her little sister. Benjamin did run after Kathy before she became his girlfriend, and then his fiancée. She, due to her work at the hospital, trivialized her time with the young millionaire, but he was patient. It was Benjamin who came to her rescue in a difficult situation. He hired people who quickly found the thieves who had cleaned out Kathy's apartment. True, they had already managed to put back some of the stolen goods, but some of them managed to return to the mistress. Benjamin also offered to help the victim financially, which the proud girl immediately refused. Kathy, unlike her sister, would not live with him either. However, the stubborn suitor was still contributing to her well-being. He cared for Kathy and picked her up from work. Even when the girl had to stay late during patient appointments, Benjamin would order lunch at the clinic. If Kathy missed it, he pampered the girl with her favorite sweets. They went for many walks, went on dates to the movies, to the theater parks. Going to a restaurant didn't end with Kathy running away or a salad in Benjamin's hair. Benjamin called it his personal victory. Young people understood each other with half a word. They had common interests and the opposite, but they were both willing to accept them. Thus, Benjamin listened with genuine interest to stories from Kathy's life. "An old dandelion lady came to us," Kathy told him. "I asked what was bothering you. And you know what she said?" She sighed. Sad, and said, "My grandchildren rarely call, and the mole is out to eat the vegetables in the garden. I can't get along with him." I had to hear about her life, and then to find out what's hurting her, not bothering her. Benjamin always laughed at the doctor's humor, marveled at how much patience and strength this fragile girl had. Patients came in all kinds. There were scandals, but she still loved her job. Kathy supported her fiancé in his business projects, though she was not strong in it. She even inspired him to create a new smartphone app designed to find quick instructions for first aid for an injured person. The first thing Benjamin offered to do was to download it to Christina in case she fell in love with someone else and decided to put a spell on him. And so they lived soul to soul, until Benjamin dared to propose to Kathy, and she responded with a coveted and confident, "Right?" And so the day X came. It was decided to celebrate the wedding out of town at a gorgeous hotel where guests could stay after the celebration in the backyard by the lake. They placed a beautiful archway, to which there was a path studded with rose petals. In the lake, the hotel owner put koi carps. He promised that these fish, which the guests had been feeding with bread mugs since the morning, would bring good luck to the newlyweds. Kathy then only smiled. She did not believe much in luck, fate, or mysticism. However, how else could she call her meeting with Benjamin, if not fate? There was a knock on the bride's room. Kathy stirred. Christina jumped to her feet too, almost tangled in her tight skirt. "Kathy, are you ready? I've come to take you down the aisle." Her father's head came through the doorway. "My God, you look so beautiful. Mom's been wet-eyed all morning. She's not going to make it now." "Yes, and I probably too." The bride smiled at her father. The man hugged her, gently kissing her forehead. Then he drew his second daughter to him as well. The family idyll was broken. The wedding event planner, the petite brunette, stormed into the room and escorted the bride and her father to their starting position. How the ceremony began, Kathy had no recollection. All she could see in front of her was the admiring face of the groom waiting for her at the altar. Benjamin, seeing the bride, even stepped forward as if intending to walk out to meet her. Only James, the witness, stopped the groom with a laugh, clapped him on the shoulder, and whispered something in his ear. The father led his daughter proudly and confidently as he passed her hand to his future son-in-law. And after the wedding vows, Kathy again told Benjamin, yes, needless to say, Kathy never regretted her decision once in her life. Her husband loved her with a sincere and pure love. From now on and forever, except 3 years after the wedding, had to share his attention for 3. After all, Kathy gave birth to 2 daughters of beautiful twin girls. However, there was only more happiness and love in their home, which everyone was very happy about.